So he's very, very compromised. I mean, he's walking marché à petits pas, walking with small steps, and he's at great risk. And he's on medications that only treat his symptoms. Let's intervene. Let's give him some intravenous glutathione, which comes from only compounding pharmacies. And my patients call, they say, gee, can I get that at CVS? Well, I think not hardly. And he's walking with much more fluidity. Did we cure him? We did not cure him. But look at him walk. He's not, his feet are keeping up with the top part of his body, and he's happier. It's very, very dramatic what we do with glutathione. This patient, again, a classic symptom of Parkinson's. He just doesn't move very much, just sitting there. It's a still picture. So, and this is he. He's moving. He walks pretty well, but notice that his arms are sort of glued to his sides. That's a classic feature of Parkinson's that I learned when I was 12 years old. Actually, it was here in Texas. We're walking down the street, my father and I, and he said, that man has Parkinson's. I said, how do you know? He said, he's lost associated movements of ambulation. So I started at this at an early stage. This is after his glutathione. Look at his arms move. Much more fluidity. Does this happen in every one of our patients? No, not at all. Happens in about 70% of our patients. This is back in 1999. We've dramatically increased our dosage of glutathione. We now use like 2,000 milligrams 3 times a week IV. I promise you, I like to joke around a lot, but that part wasn't meant to be funny. None of it was meant to be funny, but I guess it always gets a laugh. So significantly improved after glutathione. But I'm not even after symptom management here. I'm after brain protection long term. We've trained probably 800 doctors around the country to use our protocol for glutathione, and ultimately the FDA found out what we were doing, came to visit me. That's always a heartwarming experience, and gave us complete approval for our double-blind research, which is just getting finished at the University of South Florida, Movement Disorder Clinic. So that will be done and published. And I've taken my lumps on this, too, I have to say. There's videos of this going on. It's on the Internet, and people get DVDs. We have them here. And people end up showing this to their neurologists, and the neurologists say that these are actors, paid actors. Don't you love it? People are down on what they're not up on, and it's time. You cannot own glutathione. Any of you can do glutathione, correct? So this woman is pretty well crippled by her inability to move. And the grabbing of the throat indicates frustration. And again, if it wasn't for the fact that we have those walls, this is after glutathione. And I think at this point you'd be pretty hard-pressed to make any diagnosis. Well, I don't know how long the antioxidant effect lasts. That's what we're looking at. But the symptomatic improvement lasts a couple of days, 2 to 3 days. So people end up having these injections. They learn to do them at home. People get a port put in. Compounding pharmacies send them the glutathione. And people either have a spouse learn how to do it, or a neighbor who's a retired vet or EMT or nurse. So we've come a long way with this. And I will indicate that Yale University has contacted us just a month ago. They'd like to do a study of it as well. That was a glutathione video. I'm aware of that. And again, let's look at this model of glutamate and its role in plays this whole thesis of NMDA receptor plays a role in Alzheimer's, MS, and Parkinson's, ALS, Huntington's disease. It's why people in Europe have used Namenda for a decade for all of these diseases, and yet it's only indicated in the United States for moderate to severe Alzheimer's. I mean, when do you reach the point from mild Alzheimer's to moderate Alzheimer's? I mean, does that happen? You keep the Namenda here and you watch every day until, that change happens? Why not get Namenda on board early on or other schemes to reduce this activity? This is where memantine works. And here's the study from the New England Journal. And interestingly, what they found was in looking at their decline over time, that the group receiving Namenda declined much more slowly. And this is the study that should have been, this is where donepezil or Aricept should have proven effective and didn't. And this is looking at the caregiver's score and level of decline in the Namenda group over the 28 weeks versus the placebo. But here's what I think is really interesting, that the number of deaths in the placebo was 5. The number of deaths in the Namenda group was 2. And the adverse side effects was 13% in the Namenda and 18% in the group getting the sugar pill. So, I mean, it's safer than the placebo. When was the last time a drug came on the market that seemed to be safer than the placebo? 9:54. All right, let's look at obesity just before we take our snack break. What timing. No pun intended, this is a very big problem for us. And it's interesting that, Texas is really a state that has problems with obesity. As when you landed at the airport, you see large numbers of obese people and signs everywhere that say terminal. So I'm told that Texas is actually offering the driver's license picture as an aerial view. So nonetheless, that was bad. Sorry. But it's a big problem for us. We are a huge country of balloon people, and it's taking its toll. There's a direct relationship between obesity and Alzheimer's, between obesity and Parkinson's. It's a terrible thing for the brain. We used to say a mind is a terrible thing to waste, but now it seems like people are thinking that a waste is a terrible thing to mind. So, is it a big issue? Sure. The Journal of the American Medical Association tells us that over the a 10-year period, 20-year period, going from 76 to 1996, the average number of calories taken in by an American male increased by 2,200 per day. Now, that's a lot of calories. I run about 100 calories per mile running. So that's 22 miles of running of extra calories that I would do every day. So it's no wonder that we're having this big problem. That's the average. When fat attacks, this is a big problem for our country. Not that the governor was gay, but that fat is a huge issue. It's waging war on our. It says fat cells. Now, we were taught that fat is a depot of energy that we'll store it over the winter because we can't get berries or something. And that's originally what it was all about, so that during the lean times, in terms of when we were hunter-gatherers, we would have a storage depot of energy. But now people just hunt down the nearest convenience store and gather up all the Doritos. That's the only hunting and gathering that we do. And in reality, fat is profoundly metabolically active. That fat cells enhance cytokine production and directly relate to inflammation. Fat leads to inflammation. So if you were, for example, to measure somebody's triceps and 30 years later determine the person's risk for Parkinson's disease if they had fat triceps, what you found is very interesting. You found that they have almost a 300% increased risk of Parkinson's if you were fat 30 years ago. Why is that? It's because fat enhances cytokine production. And what else? Fat serves as a storage depot for lipid-soluble toxins, which we talked about already in terms of Parkinson's disease. So these people that, when you see people that are just not paying attention to obesity, it's a very important issue. Our diets play a critical role in inflammation. I'm sure many of you recently saw the cover of Newsweek magazine. People are totally confused as to what they should do with reference to their diets now. But we know that things that the bad fats and other aspects of the human diet increase inflammation, and that good fats, supplementing with omega-3s, omega-6s, more vegetarian diet, increase the production of the 1 and 3 series prostaglandins, which are linked to reduce inflammation. So we have choices that we can make that directly influence the degree of inflammation in our bodies. Well, meat increases the production of arachidonic acid, which in the presence of the COX-2 enzyme increases the the prostaglandin 2 series, the inflammation-inducing prostaglandins. So these are things that we can use to inhibit this activity, inhibit COX-2. There was a huge push for COX-2 inhibitors, as we all know, and yet the pharmaceutical COX-2 inhibitors, to a large degree, suffered their licks because of things that we're still learning about. Even last week in the New England Journal of Medicine was further information about what should have been disclosed to the public about the dangers of COX-2 inhibitors.